It was billed as a breakthrough conference to help Somalia finally turn a corner after 20 years of war, poverty, piracy and militancy. But is the hope expressed at last month's London summit already beginning to unravel? Reports have emerged of secret deals between Somalia's transitional government and Western interests, namely natural resources in return for helping to defeat al-Shabaab. But is this another foreign takeover in all but name that will only lead to more conflict? That's what we'll be asking this week on Africa Today.
Somalia's political leaders are growing increasingly skeptical about Britain and US's recent focus on their country. On the surface, last month's London conference, hosted by British Prime Minister David Cameron, was about supporting the transitional government in Mogadishu, backing the African Union peacekeepers, cracking down on piracy and keeping the militant group al-Shabaab on the run. But reports hint at another agenda. It's been revealed Britain has been involved in secret talks with the Somali government about access to its oil and energy resources in return for humanitarian aid and security assistance. Somalia's Prime Minister Abdiweli Muhammad Ali has already promised Western countries of his nation's natural resources if they defeat al-Shabaab. But some Somali activists say such help from the West could amount to a takeover by outside interests. Analysts believe such foreign intervention could lead to a dangerous bridging of the gap between ordinary Somalis and the radicals of al-Shabaab. This week, Africa Today asks if Western policy is stoking up more tension in Somalia.
Hello, I'm Henry Bonso and this is Africa Today. Well, it was a bold 7-point plan promising more humanitarian aid, support for African Union troops fighting al-Shabaab and the setting up of an inclusive government. But as the Somali President Sheikh Sharif Ahmed observed, pledging is the easy bit. There are also concerns about the price Somalia might have to pay for all this foreign assistance. First, there's the Joint Financial Management Board mentioned in the conference communique. Then reports emerged of secret talks between Britain and Somalia, offering the country more help in return for preferential access to resources. So should Somalis be concerned that this might end up in Western domination? Let's speak to our guests. They are Mr. Farhan Ali Ahmed, Secretary General of the Somali Concern Group, Zakaria Mahmoud Haj Abdi, Chairman of the Alliance for Re-Liberation of Somalia, and we hope to be joined on the line from Mogadishu, the Chief of Staff to the Office of Prime Minister, Abdishakur Mohamed Guri. We're going to start off with you, first of all, Mr. Farhan Ali Ahmed. It sounds impressive, all of this help coming in, defeat al-Shabaab, and moving towards a more inclusive government. How convinced were you that something was genuinely achieved at the recent conference?
Well, actually, thanks for inviting us firstly, this program for Africa and for Africanists.
Yes.
And we are really glad to be here. To be honest, the conference at the beginning, I mean, there were a lot of speculations, and there were a lot of worrying, and there were, I mean, a lot Somalis were worrying about what is the outcome and how is the running and the managing, and there was a lot of worrying.
Yeah.
But when the conference has ended, the outcome and the communique, so far what we have seen it, actually the Somali people have welcomed it and actually convinced us how they discussed the real issues about Somalia for the first time.
But as the President has said before, these pledges have come and they have gone. Conferences have been held and they just disappeared. The pledges have disappeared into thin air. What makes you think this will do something positive for the Somali people in Mogadishu, in Baidoa, elsewhere?
Actually, for the first time, this conference is a turning point, and it is for the first time for the last 20 years. First, the conference held in the West capital, one of the capital cities in the West, especially in London. And actually, the Somali people, the West, since this 1992 UNISOM invasion intervention, UN intervention in Somalia, the West has actually turned its back. The Somali and Somalis, they have suffered a lot. They went. There was a lot of conflict was going on. There was humanitarian crisis in Somalia. There were a lot of. I mean, the people in Somalia actually they have suffered a lot. For the first time in 20 years, the West actually the Somali problem has attracted West, and Cameron, the Prime Minister of this country, actually make a great effort to lead and actually make it cooperation to make in order to have a policy towards Somalia.
So you seem convinced by his motives, that his motives are genuine to help the people of Somalia. Well, let's speak to Zakaria Mahmoud Abdi. Are you as convinced that this was genuinely in the interest of the Somali people? Because to have Ban Ki-moon from the United Nations, Hillary Clinton from the United States, 55 either government leaders or senior representatives of a variety of government organizations and institutions, it sounds impressive, it sounds like there's real concern, but do you have your doubts?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think let's first highlight the balance sheet of where the conference succeeded and where it failed. First, militarization of the Somali situation was number one, whereby Ethiopia, Kenya, Ugandan forces are in the country.
12,000 troops going up to 18,000?
Their leaders were here, including Malek Zenawi, who the Somalis regard him as a war criminal, who have actually committed crimes against humanity by killing over 50,000 Somalis in 2006-2009. This obviously will lead to another crisis. The Somalis read this as an occupation of their country. The second point is focusing symptoms rather than root causes of the problem, like piracy, terrorism. This is not the real cause of Somalia's problem.
What is the cause?
The Somalia's problem is a political problem. Somalia needs to be reconciled by itself. Somalia needs a political dialogue. Somalia needs political settlement. There is no military solution for Somalia's problem. It has been for the last 21 years. There have been always an attempt to have a military solution, and it never ever got off the ground. Actually, it became counterproductive.
But as we heard from Mr. Farhan Ali Ahmed, the West turned its back on Somalia, so Somalia was left to itself. And as we've seen, let me finish the point. As we've seen since 1991, we've seen factionalization, we've seen unilateral declarations of independence from Somaliland, we've seen self-governing province Puntland, and we've seen the rest of the country slide into chaos. It appears if Somalis cannot do it for themselves, it needs help from outside.
No, I'm telling you, this is not true. The West has been around since the collapse of the Somali state. The neighboring countries were around since the collapse of the Somali state. They were actually,
Ethiopia, Kenya.
They were actually meddling the affairs of the Somali people. They were all the time, when the Somalis tried to have a local solution, they used to intervene and make it failure. Now, to continue for the conference's success and what I call the balance sheet of the conference, exclusion of the Somalis. I mean, the conference was highly selective. It was highly selective by picking up 5 groups who are almost all failed. 5 Somali groups, where the credible Somalis and genuine Somalis have not been invited in the conference.
Why weren't they invited, do you think? Were you not invited?
They were only from one side, those who are very docile to the external intervention of Somalia. But those who are critical for that, and those who differ the idea, i.e. the nationalist or the patriot group, have not been given accommodation.
Well, let me put that to Mr. Ali Ahmed. You sounded more positive about this conference. You seem to be pleased about the increased militarization of the situation, about the offer of technical assistance, more humanitarian aid. There's also talk about this joint financial management board, which some Somalis are very concerned about, because it means that foreign hands will be on the nation's coffers. Are you docile? Are you basically just desperate for Western intervention to help you? As your colleague here, it seems to be accusing, not you directly, but the kinds of groups that maybe that you represent?
First of all, the representation of the Somali people, actually, for the first time in the last 20 years, is the first time that all Somali regions came together. And Somaliland, for the first time, they came this conference. So all regions, they are here.
You're both smiling at each other. But
no, what I'm saying, those who are on the ground, the regions, Somaliland, Puntland, and the south, exceptional Shabab area, those who control Al-Shabaab area, they were here.
Yeah.
And if you actually, because if you were with if you were there, they say the solution is for the Somalis. I mean, nobody can build a country from outside. Actually, the Prime Minister of this country has said the solution is for the Somalis.
But they clearly need some kind of help.
Yes, the international community will only facilitate it and support the Somalis to set up their own government and to build their own country. And for the Somalis alone, for the last 20 years, they have suffered a lot, and I believe they need the help of the international community. For this conference, what has happened so far, it is to have a common policy toward Somalia. Maybe before there were actually unilateral, every country maybe were pursuing its own policy toward it. But this conference has actually created an environment that the international community, they have a united policy toward Somalia.
And as far as you're concerned, what does that united policy mean, especially when it comes to Somalia and her natural resources? I mean, there's talk of 100 billion barrels of oil, more than Nigeria, which has just 37, making Somalia potentially as rich as Kuwait. People are getting very excited. The Russians, the Chinese, the British, the French, your country could soon become a client state. Doesn't that worry you?
Well, actually, first, in order to have the resources, first we need to set up the state, Somali state, which has collapsed 20 years ago. We cannot, nobody can defend Somalia now. Anybody can go in and come out because there is no a central state. There is no, the state has collapsed. The nation has also disintegrated. What's used to be a Somali republic. So first of all, Somali people has to set up their state, and only the state that can preserve the resources of the Somali people without help of the international community, without the Somalis themselves to negotiate and deal political problems that they had for the last 20 years, without negotiation each other, without having a genuine Somali reconciliation among the Somalis, without accommodating those political oppositionists at the moment who was fighting for a political power, without accommodating it. I'm afraid, no. I mean, it is not going to be easy. I mean, someone who speculates about the resources, the Western are taking it, or other peoples. I mean, the resources are there. They were there before. They will be there. What is lacking? It is the Somali institutions or Somali state, which will deal with.
That's where the help from outside can come in. So what about that? What part of that do you find so difficult to accept? Because I mean, our colleague here, Mr. Ali Ahmed, says it is worth trusting these people, these actors from outside. They have our best interests at heart. And of course, Mr. Cameron himself has said, if we don't help Somalia, Somalia will be exporting more terrorism.
Let me tell you, my friend, these external actors have been around for the last 21 years. They were not outside Somalia. And they have never, ever brought any stability. Rather, there was always a counterproductive process. Let me tell you one thing.
Okay, so who was inside Somalia? We know that the Ugandans are there. We know that the Ethiopians have been there. We know that Kenyans are there.
All 18 conferences preceding this were held outside Somalia. And it was managed by international community, so-called international community. Let me give you a very, very concise idea. There were no any paradigm shift in this conference. All along 21 years, there were one policy, and that is containment policy and conflict management policy. It has never been a conflict resolution or founding a political solution for the Somali problem.
So what does conflict resolution and political solution actually look like?
There is obviously a difference between conflict management and versus conflict resolution. Conflict management means to keep the status quo by managing the conflict and doing phases for it. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And conflict resolution means to go to the bottom of the problem, to solve the heart of the problem. And the heart of the problem, as I told you, is a political, it's not military. This militarization of Somalia has been since 1992. It's all failed. It not only all failed, but it produced more catastrophic dilemma and put Somalia in a vicious circle.
So are you suggesting, wait a minute, I really must come in. Are you suggesting that any trace of Ethiopian military should be completely gone? The Kenyans should pull out, the Ugandans should pull out, any other foreign troops?
My friend,
should
the country is under occupation. That is the reality of Somalia. So-called TFG, for example, people who have been invited here, some of them were ousted their offices 2 or 3 months ago by their parliamentary themselves, like Sharif Hassan, who's been ousted by his parliament. And the government of Britain has accorded him a red carpet.
Yeah.
This is a contradiction for the statement which is written here, Somalis only can build their country, but there is a contradiction. How on earth you bring 50 countries into the fora and to manage the Somali as stakeholders, so-called stakeholders, and say at the same time the Somalis should solve their problem? This is completely a contradictory statement. Now, bring people like Melissa and ask to the solution of Somalia. This is a mockery. This is ridiculous.
So, what would your policy be toward Al-Shabaab? Because in this country, of course, they are seen as the highest priority.
Al-Shabaab are symptoms. They are not. Do you know when the first Al-Shabaab name I have heard? When the Ethiopian force came in.
So 2006?
2007.
2007.
Yes. At the time, before the Ethiopian intervention, there were only Islamic courts.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, because of this, it's a reaction. They are a reactionary group. It's a reaction of the Ethiopian occupation.
But they're now here.
Of killing their,
but now
their
they're
fathers.
Here.
Wait a minute.
What is here?
Yeah. But if you bring the same problem by bringing Ethiopians, inviting Ethiopians to invade Somalia, then you are actually creating more Shababs, more extremism, and more havoc to the country.
Okay.
This is a zero-sum game. There were no any progress. It was only, I would say, if you go to my balance sheet, the conference was successful in PR.
All right. Let's see what our listeners, our viewers have been saying via Facebook, email and by text. And let's see what we have here. The first message is via Facebook, and it's from Omar in Nigeria saying, the Northerners suffer the most in these attacks carried out by these sects, and the media cover it up and say the Northern leaders are the sponsors. Via email from Abdullahi in Nigeria, he says, about 7 years ago, when I heard about the bomb blasts in Pakistan and Afghanistan, I reflected back to the situation in my country, Nigeria, and I said to my friends, if the corruption that has crippled our country is not tackled someday, we will also experience the same fate. The MEND started it and Boko Haram took over. Trust me, if care is not taken, then the worst is yet to happen. And finally, this text came in from Nkimbizi in California. Nkimbizi says, according to the World Bank reports, Somalia is the second African country with vast unexploited oil reserves. Puntland province alone is able to produce between 5 and 10 billion barrels of oil. The West could use fighting terrorism to invade Somalia in order to steal their oil. Keep your thoughts flowing to us. Email africa@presstv.co.uk and text us to +44 7800 008086 and Facebook fan page Africa Today, Press TV London. So let's talk more about this and that last email from Nkimbizi, Mr. Farhan Ali Ahmed. That is a suspicion of many people. The reason why Western countries are interested in Somalia again all of a sudden is they're concerned about Al-Shabaab, of course, they're concerned about piracy, but it's really about their economic interests, and they want to be seen to be helping Somalia to make sure that when peace finally comes, as surely one day it will, they'll be in the vanguard. British government and officials have already been talking quietly to Somali transitional federal government officials to make sure that when there is peace, they'll be able to exploit the oil and gas reserves. That should make you suspicious.
Well, actually, first is the Somalis. They need what they need mostly is peace at the moment. If the international community, so far, they claimed it and addressed it several times, they are going to help with Somalia now, as the British government has said it, if they sincerely dedicated to supporting Somalia to achieve peace and stability this time, the government of Somalia will actually deal with all these resources. And Somalia is not exceptional.
The government of Somalia,
you see, the Somalia
isn't even in control of its own budget now. We've got this joint management board, you know?
You're talking about the current government.
Yeah.
I mean, if there is a peace in Somalia, if the Somali people reconcile themselves, if the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Somalia has achieved completely, if the nation of the state of Somalia has been achieved, the Somalis will be helped to achieve that, then a credible, accountable government will deal all the resources. Somalia is not different from Nigeria, as you said it. It is not different Kuwait. It is not different other countries who have...
It could be a very rich country. It could be.
Then is the government. If there is no government, then I think, the speculation is of the resources. I think so. It's not going to be helping for the peace of Somalia, and also it's not going to help for the international community who is now actually gesturing they're going to help Somalia for the first time.
What do you think Somalia should do about? By that I'm talking about Mogadishu, the transitional federal government, should do about relations with Puntland and Somaliland, the self-declared or autonomous or independent countries. How do you think you should be getting together as one integral entity, one country? Is it possible?
Yes, it is possible. Actually, traditionally Somali people, it's one of homogeneous people. And the Somalis, they have dreamed to have Somali-ness. All the Somalis has to come together. Yeah. And the good thing is of the conference, actually, for the first time, the president of Somaliland is there.
Yes.
And the communique also said it. They have to talk each other and actually deal each other. They have to negotiate it. And I believe the Somali people, when the time comes, they will negotiate it. They will sort it out, all those regional and the central government. And there is two parallel lines. Now we think the solution is going. One is to build the local authorities to rebuild and establish all those areas. And then also put it more emphasis and empower the central government. So it's two parallel lines with equal lengths, and if those two lines grow up together, I think the state will rebuild itself.
Well, Mr. Haj Abdi, that sounds like a blueprint. Are you prepared to sign up to that blueprint, or are you going to fight from the outside?
No, the problem is this wealth actually is a curse to the Somalis. The Somali marine wealth has been looted by the external companies from 1991, because there is no Somali coastal guards. Now they are coming to loot what's inside. They have already dissected what's above the earth. One of the last remarks,
10 seconds.
The conference was based, or actually the benchmark was, for a failed approach, like Djibouti process, like Kampala Accord, like roadmap, all these are failed. We're
going to have to return to this again. Thank you very much indeed. There's never enough time. Thank you very much indeed. And that's it for today. Thanks to all of you who've sent in comments to us. Email africa@presstv.co.uk or text us to +44 7800 008086. Messages will be charged at your local operator rates. Many thanks to our guests. They were Mr. Farhan Ali Ahmed, Secretary General of Somali Concern Group, and Zakaria Mahmoud Haj Abdi, Chairman of the Alliance for the Re-Liberation of Somalia. We didn't manage to contact our third colleague, Abdi Shakur Mahmoud Gurev, but we will do at some point in the future. Visa is back next week for another edition of Africa Today. Till then, it's goodbye from me, and on behalf of the whole team, thanks again for watching.